from our previous speaker from Ireland, our next speakers are joining us from UK. Dicken heads up data and analytics for multinational experience design agency Foolproof. He specializes in bridging AI and advanced analytics into the consumer space, working with business, technology, and design stakeholders to bring all of their needs together. He has been the regional head of data and analytics for HSBC in Asia, built capabilities for leading consultancy businesses such as PwC and Capgemini Invent. Joining him is David Rogerson, who is principal consultant at Foolproof, where he helps clients develop and deploy effective experience design strategies within their organizations in order to drive innovation, digital transformation, or optimize an existing product or service. Welcome to our virtual stage, Dicken and David.
So yeah, welcome, and thanks for inviting us. We've only got 15 minutes, so we're going to dive straight in and see how much we can get through in our time. So I want to start with this quote from an architect back in 1979 called Cedric Price, and he said, "Technology is the answer, but what's the question?" At the time, he was talking about cars and cities, and he thought that rather than thinking about how to design a city around a car, we should begin by thinking about how we want to move around that city, and then figure out what role cars play after. So if AI is the answer, what's the question? So if we have technology that doesn't answer a pressing question, then we're leaving it to luck as to whether or not we succeed. A few years back, I worked in the Technology Transfer Office of University College London, and tech transfer focuses on the exploitation and commercialization of technologies created within the university. But because of the nature of universities and the way that new technologies are created, they suffer from this problem of innovation looking for a home. So it's a bit like a room with 1,000 doors. How do you know what key goes with what? So how can we think about the problems that need solving? So I'm going to call on another architect, Christopher Alexander. He said, every design problem begins with an effort to achieve fitness between two entities, the form and its context. The form is the solution to the problem. The context defines the problem. So in product or business design, we might call this product market fit. From the context, needs and opportunities emerge, and we can begin to articulate desired outcomes for both the business and the user. I want to give you an example of this. So I think it was back in the 90s, Houston Airport had an inordinate number of complaints about the long waits at baggage claim. Their first response was to increase the number of baggage handlers, which kind of makes sense, right? That'll fix the problem. But they managed to reduce the time the bags took to travel from the plane to the carousel to under 8 minutes, which at the time was well below industry standards. And the complaints kind of dipped slightly, but then continued to pour in. On looking at the experience closer, they realized that it took passengers a minute to walk from the arrival gates to the baggage claim and 7 more minutes to wait for their bags. So they took another approach. So by understanding the context and the problem, they moved the arrivals gate. So they just made it further away from the carousel. It now took 7 minutes to walk from the airport, getting off the airplane to picking up your bags. 6 times longer than it was before. Only waiting 1 minute then for your bags to arrive, and complaints dropped to nearly 0. So how do we understand the context? How do we know what outcomes to focus on? So we use this framework called jobs to be done. And actually, when I was watching Janet's talk earlier, she was talking about how to put learners at the center of a strategy. And maybe this is one way that you might think about doing that. So yeah, we use this framework called jobs to be done. And it was first described by Clay Christensen. And he said, when we buy a product, we essentially hire something to get a job done. If it does the job well and we're confronted with the same job, we hire the same product again and again. And if the product does a bad job, we fire it and look around for something else we might hire to solve the problem. So when we start thinking about what a job to be done is for a customer or for a user, first of all, we need to begin to understand the context, so the current reality that the user finds themselves in. We then need to think about what they're trying to get to, what's their desired end goal, what's the better future they're imagining. Then we think about the competitor set. So for example, if I'm hungry and I'm on the go, I may be choosing between a chocolate bar, an apple, or for some people, maybe even a cigarette to solve that job. But you wouldn't call them traditional category competitors, and you wouldn't find them in the supermarket next to one another, for example. And then you think about the forces that are pulling you towards a solution or away from solutions. So for example, I may be pushed by a terrible user experience on my current phone, but what's stopping me switching is the huge amount of investment I've made into that particular ecosystem, which makes it difficult for me to switch. Another facet of jobs to be done is that they don't really change over time. So if we take transport, for example, so these are the two Foolproof offices in Norwich and London. The job of getting from Norwich to London hasn't really changed since Anglo-Saxon times. Context may differ slightly, but the desired outcome remains the same. What does change are the solutions. Or more specifically, the affordances we create to solve the job better. So by affordances, we mean the possible actions that are offered up by our environment or products or experience. And AI in this context offers a totally new subset of affordances. And it helps me get the jobs to be done of getting myself and my stuff from A to B quicker, easier, more efficiently. But it also helps me solve other jobs to be done at the same time. Not just getting from A to B. It would allow me to work whilst commuting or avoid accidents. It could reduce the cost of my insurance. It could potentially drive me there faster. So we all carry around this complex set of interconnected and occasionally competing jobs to be done at all times. The context we're in will catapult certain jobs to the forefront. So, for example, as we have in here, if anyone's ever had a baby, you quickly find a whole new bunch of jobs to be done that need to happen straight away. In this example, I've picked out a few things that might be driven by a desire to be a good parent. One of only a few things, I should add. To be healthy, so that I can play with them at the weekend, for example, or to be financially stable, or to be emotionally there for them. And in this example, we have a competing goal of wanting to earn enough money to provide stability, but to have enough time to be with them. And I think we probably all share that struggle all the time. The hierarchy of goals and desires can help us look for places where the job can be done better or cheaper, or both of those things, and where the job is being underserved in the market. This is an example of where AI can offer new opportunities to achieve that. For example, in the area of banking and finance. So on that, I'm going to hand over to Dicken.
Yeah, thanks, David. So the whole point, I suppose, of this talk is that we're very, very focused on what people need and want and their higher order goals and so on. So what we're really trying to do is help people to achieve those goals and be better human beings in whatever way they feel that works for them. The problem is, as soon as we start thinking about AI, we get into stuff like that which is on screen at the moment. So we get very quickly into kind of technical capability, and we get into lots of theory and so on. So what sort of machine am I building? Is this requiring machine learning or deep learning? Is deep learning AI? Is it not? Obviously not always, etc. And all of these things, of course, are incredibly important from the perspective of delivering AI, but it's a confusion that we don't really need when we're trying to think about how we're going to solve the concerns, issues, problems, or whatever for our customers or for our clients' customers. So, sorry, next slide, David. You're taking on the role of glamorous assistant as well as speaker. So we find it much easier not to think about AI in those terms when we start to talk about technological solutions to the things we're trying to solve. We tend to think more in terms of affordances, as David's kind of mentioned before. And one of the ways we find it easier to get into that conversation is through a categorization, something like this. So these are content, comprehension, conversation, and compliance are all areas of activity that can be aided by technology. And can fit in with our sort of thinking, but are also, if you like, just things that need to be done anyway. They don't have to be done in a technological way. There are other ways of achieving these outcomes, but it helps us to align what we're thinking about from a technology perspective with what we're doing with the particular situation we're trying to solve. So in this case, we're talking about David's desire to have a better financial future for his family, and therefore seeking out bank accounts and savings capabilities and things like that. So if you just click the next button for me. Oh, thanks. So so at the top here, and maybe just the next one as well. So at the top here, we've got, as an organization, we've got lots and lots of information. The key is how quickly we can get that information to David, and how useful it is, and contextually sort of useful it is to him. So we've got ways of doing that, right? So technology has given us recommendation engines and automated optimization and so on. So we have ways of doing that and helping with that requirement. And if you click twice more for me, David. And then in terms of comprehension, so how do we understand David? Because David knows what he wants, and he's maybe done some thinking about why he wants it. We need to understand that, and as soon as David starts to use our services and products, we can start to collect information to help us do that. But of course, historically, we haven't been very good at context. Now we have things like contextual search. We might want to understand his context in terms of his location, and those sorts of things as well. We can do those things now from a technological perspective. Next one, you have to click twice, I think. Again, perfect. Conversation. So we've got all kinds of interesting and useful ways to help David use our tools and solutions, like chatbots and so on, so we can very quickly get him to the right sorts of information. We spend a lot of time thinking about ideas like accessibility. We could let David talk to his phone to get some of that information in ways that we haven't been able to do previously, of course, all aided by AI. And then in terms of compliance, so I think we tend to think of compliance as quite a back-end business activity, but in fact, we've got lots of fantastic ways of helping people to get into devices quickly and easily, but very securely, and we can do that too. Sorry, next slide, David. Thank you. So, and this is another way we tend to think about the work that we're doing. So, a lot of AI thinking, developing new capabilities and so on happens on the left-hand side of this chart over in the data innovation space. And we're interested in that. We're owned by a company called Zensar, who have a lot of specialists that can help us do that specific work. But increasingly, we want to work in the middle here in the software layer. So the software layer is becoming incredibly kind of intelligent in its own right. We don't have to go back to basics and program everything from the start. And the further you get to the right of this chart, the more we're able to put this kind of thinking and capability in the hands really of designers, so we can reduce the amount of time and noise required for them to get their heads around what can be done from a technological perspective. And also we can really use the software layer to make this thinking scalable and replicable. Okay, we've already got ways of solving lots of these problems using technology that we don't need to go out and invent again. And the next one. And this is the last thought from me specifically on this one, which is how we work. So this is an example of a squad that we've got at one of our clients. So it's a large global media organization. The way we work is we want our data scientists and our technologists and our AI specialists working in the same squads as our designers and our researchers and our front-end developers. So and anyone else that needs to be in that squad in order to get this activity done. And what we find there is these individuals are sparking off each other. So the data scientist has been taking a look at some information, has got some ideas for how a new product might be developed, can then go and spend time with the designer. They can have a look at the potential for that. Equally, the designer might have an idea, but not totally sure how it would be delivered, and the data scientist can assist with that. They kind of live off each other in a way that they can't really do if the data scientist is in a little silo on their own and is just waiting for the opportunity to do their bit of the job. So we work very much in this collaborative way and ensure that we've got all key skills within our squads, and typically in the same room, depending on how we go. So we've got just a few takeouts for you from this. I'm going to let David sort of kick off, and I'll come back in a moment.
Okay, yeah. So firstly, don't seek applications for technologies. It should be the other way around. So don't be led. Don't be excited by the technology too soon, or else it tends to be innovation theatre. Second, know the job that you're hiring the AI to do. And thirdly, focus on tasks and activities that tap into the higher order goals of your users, of your customers.
And then I think express technology capabilities in terms of what they do, not how they're done. So try not to get dragged into a conversation about what AI is and how good or not a particular application might be. Instead, we always want to think about how we're going to use this technology in order to improve the lives of consumers, and also in terms of ways of working, make sure that all specialisms that are involved in development of a product can work closely and collaboratively together. Seems to be the way to make this work. And I think that's us.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was David Rogerson and Dicken joining us all the way from the United Kingdom. So we will start our next session